G'day folks. Well, you may remember the removable scenery that I've built on the left hand side of my drop down bridge here. Well, now it's time to put a new lot in, and it's got to go onto the right hand side here on this black part here, and we'll have to work out how to build that. I'll use a method I've used before, which is ply as a base and MDF as the fronts and sides, etc., and create a similar sort of box section. However, this time I'll need to use magnets to hold it down, and I'll show you how we're going to go about that. This first module relies on its shape and its position to actually keep it in place. You can't actually dislodge it once it's fitted in place, and so there was no need for magnets or pins or anything to hold it there. It's just a simple lift on lift off system. Whereas for this other module I'll be using these magnetic hooks, and not the hook part but just purely the magnet. This is what the magnet looks like when it's assembled as it's supposed to be used, but what I want to do is take off this hook and also this nut area here, and the way we'll do that is we'll turn it upside down and drill out this flanged area or flared area here and remove the nut. To start, I've cut out two pieces of ply in this shape. You can see here the top one is actually narrower than this. This is the base with a ballast barrier built in here, and it is glued and screwed to the bridge to make it a permanent fixture. It's pinned in various areas, as you can see. Right, these are the materials that we're going to be using. The magnet is prepared, and that other thing is actually a furniture stay, which is recovered from old cabinets or something or other that I've found a while back. So they will act as contact strips for the magnet. The next step is to drill some holes in the top board to accept the magnets, and there's only two of those. Once the holes are cut out, we then overlay the top board onto the bottom board and mark the circles onto the bottom board, and then we have to mark out the area where the contact strips will go. Then you remove one of the layers of ply to leave a strip for the contact strip to fit into, a little shallow trench. And then we do some testing, lay it all over to make sure everything's going to work and clearances are good. You'll notice that the contact strip has to be trimmed off yet. And then we'll get a straight edge and just lay it over the top of the magnet here to make sure everything's flush and everything's going to work, and we're pretty right to go from here on. Now it's time to trim off the contact strips and drill some holes in them. It's also important to countersink the holes so that the screws sit flush with the top of the board there, and when you put the top board on there's no problem. Right, the contact strips are now fitted into the board in the two locations that you can see here, and just check to make sure everything is flush, which it is, so we're right to go with the further building of the module to sit on top. This is another furniture stay that I will use to support the magnets in the holes, and I'll take advantage of the holes already drilled in the stay, and therefore I will cut it here and here. After the appropriate holes are drilled, the whole unit can be assembled by putting the bolt through. I use a nut and a locking washer, and I trim the bolt off and just tidy it up to keep it all flush on top there, or as much as possible. The screws pass through the 6mm ply, so I filed them flush as well. We just need to keep everything neat and tidy underneath there. Now it's time for a test fit and to make sure everything is working. And what we need to do now is consider the backboard, which will be flush with the bottom of the bridge there. So what we need to do is consider how we're going to line it up with the top of the module there. And so what you do is mark out your pre-cut backboard with some lines to indicate where the top board will be, and then it's a matter of setting it up so that you can glue it. And once you've glued it, you can put panel pins in along the line of the pencil there to secure it to the board. And once you've done that, it should be right to go, and you can move on to the next stage, which is the fronts and so on. I moved on to the ends next, so I had to mark out the profiles that I wanted to use and set them up, and I did each end, and it involves a bit of patience with this sort of thing, because you really have to glue on such thin materials. You can use some panel pins, but it does require patience and time. You know, you just got to clamp it up once it's glued and just walk away from it, let it set, and then come back to it and play with it later. I also did the front, which is a step down brick wall, and it's supposed to match up with the adjoining brick wall that's already there. And this had to be set a little bit higher on the baseboard, because it has to sit on top of the ballast barrier. So that was a little tricky to fit, but I glued it first and put the clamps on, and then came along with panel pins and secured them into it as well. And then I released the clamps, and it's come up pretty well. It sits perfectly on the ballast barrier there, and the whole lot fits rather snug. I'm really rather pleased with it. And what we'll do is come along now and give you a demo on how the thing actually works. So let's get into that now. And here's an overhead shot too as well. Forgot about that.
Well folks, that's how it's done. There's still polystyrene to be put in here, which will further strengthen the whole structure, and it'll become like a polystyrene sandwich in the end. And with the polystyrene glued along the back here and along the base and everything, it's just going to tie it all together really well. Obviously I'll have to make a sort of a little impression to sort of cover the magnet here, but you know, it's no big deal. We're cutting through butter with a hot knife in polystyrene. So yeah, and on the front here, as you can see, I've stepped it down. This is for the brick wall. Yeah, there'll be brick paper over that, and some capping on the wall, and we'll probably have a nice grass embankment here, maybe some trees, who knows, whatever. And yeah, so it's very lightweight. The magnets help keep it in place, and I'll just show you how it locks down. Okay, here we go. It just literally, now I'll hold it above the magnets, and just let it, you can it's quite, it doesn't pull up, if you can believe what I'm doing there, and it locks into place quite easily, but just removes like that. And the magnets have this very positive, you can hear that clicking, that's where it's clamping in onto the magnet. And to further demonstrate the holding power of it, now bearing in mind there's not much weight in this, it's very light, and when we add the polystyrene, you know, and a bit of plaster, a bit of grass, some trees, nothing really. So there's nothing there to hold, and it was designed really because this is so thin. The magnets are used to hold it steady, because being so thin it could actually fall off that way, I suppose, backwards. But it's also designed to prevent it from knocks, although any knock would come from this side, and on this side we've got the backboard going down below the bridge, so it can't actually move forward. Magnets or no magnets, it won't move forward. Plus I've got the barrier here for the ballast, so in that direction really there's no need for magnets. It's this way. So, or even, I guess it's very unlikely that you could knock it upwards, but it doesn't come up very easily. So there you are. So what we'll do now is just to further confirm the holding power of the magnets. I'll drop the bridge down and then I'll put it on to the bridge. So just bear with me while I set that up. Okay, it's a bit tight to film this one, but you can see the bridge is down, and so what we'll do is just put the camera back up there, and now I'll grab the lift off section, just whack it on there. There we go. That's the holding power of the magnets, and you can see that it's clear of the floor there. So with the additional weight of polystyrene and some plaster and trees, I don't think it'll make much difference. So there you go, folks. That's part of the journey on this section of scenery, and if you want to keep up with how this actual part is developing, just go on to platform1mrc.com and look up the Great Chesterford Junction thread, and I'll be posting pictures in there of the final development of this part. So there we go, that's all for now, and I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next week. Cheers, Gormo.